In today's video, 10 tips for purposeful and effective difficult conversations. Hello, coaches. Welcome back to another episode of 5 Minute Friday from Eduro Learning. My name is Kim, and I am the CEO and founder of Eduro Learning. I am also the premium mentor for the Coach Microcredential, and I offer private mentorship for coaches and educators around the world. I've been an instructional coach in international schools for almost 20 years, and this topic of difficult conversations is one that has always kind of been at the edges of my conversations with teachers and colleagues because it's something as educators we kind of struggle with, right? We don't often get trained in handling difficult conversations or confrontational issues with our colleagues, and it feels really scary. But it doesn't have to be. Over the last year, I conducted over 70 interviews with successful women leaders in the education sector all around the world. And one of the questions I asked them is, what have they learned about handling confrontation over the course of their career? And there was some really consistent messaging that came through in those conversations that connected with my own personal experience and really resonated with me. So I wanted to share that with you today. I think it's really important to feel confident in being able to have these kinds of conversations. It is a critical leadership skill that will serve you in all aspects of your professional and possibly your personal life. So being better at handling difficult conversations is something we should all work towards. I'm really excited to be sharing this particular video with you right now because registration for the 5th cohort of the Coach Microcredential is open right now. And this particular topic has actually come up quite a bit in my conversations with my coaching clients as part of the Coach Mentorship. So this is something that you might dive into if you participate in the Coach Microcredential. To hear a little bit more about why you might want to be interested in joining the coach, stay tuned to the end of the video where I'll share one of our current participants talking about why they think you should join the coach. Okay, let's get started. I've got 10 tips, but I've broken them down into 3 sections to make it easier to follow. And these are my tips for purposeful and effective difficult conversations. And I'm just going to kind of offer them in a timeline order. So I'm going to start with preparing for this conversation. And this might be something that we don't always put enough effort into. It's really valuable to take some time to actually prepare to have a successful conversation. Some of the things that could be helpful for you are, number 1, to write down what you want to say. You might discover when you write it down that it's actually a lot more words than you thought. And the words you're planning to use actually carry more emotion than you thought. If you just rehearse it in your head, it's part of the voice in your head and it sounds natural and flowy and easy and right. But if you write it down and look at it, you can actually see opportunities to revise and simplify and clarify exactly what you plan to say. My second tip is to practice or rehearse what you want to say. Maybe you feel the most comfortable doing this in a mirror, or maybe you want to record it like I'm doing now. Or even better, maybe you want to practice with a colleague. In my Women Who Lead interviews, many women suggested rehearsing or practicing this conversation with a colleague. I particularly appreciated Jen Tickle's perspective as a former theater director. She talked about acting it out, getting that colleague to full on be the other person in this conversation so you are prepared to deal with any possible outcome to anything you might say. The key is you don't want the first time that you're having this conversation with this person to be the first time you're having this conversation. You kind of want to have gone over it, not just in your head, but in practice, so you really get comfortable with all the movements you might make, the words you might choose, the way you might sit, the place you might sit, what you might wear, so you're really ready for this conversation. My third thing is to set aside a time and a place to think about a neutral place to have this conversation. If there's a spot on campus that you can have a conversation that isn't your room or their room, that's really great. If that's not possible, at least can you make it a little more neutral by sitting on the same side of the table and thinking about actually setting aside enough time to have this conversation so you can talk for 15 or 20 minutes and actually have a conversation. It's not something you want to catch somebody in the hallway and try to talk about. My fourth tip is to choose the simplest language possible with the least amount of words. I think we're really used to writing report card comments and softening our feedback and being really sensitive to the other person's emotions in almost every aspect of our teaching roles. But when it is a difficult conversation, we need to really cut to the chase and be clear. I'm going to talk more about that in just a second. As you're kind of in this preparation stage, there are some considerations you might want to make. And I don't know if this is officially like number 5 or just kind of an addendum, but you might want to think about the best place, like I mentioned, a neutral place. You might want to think about, should there be someone else in the room? Does someone else need to observe this, whether for the other person or for you, so that you feel like you have a neutral pair of eyes in the room? What kind of documentation are you going to take? And how quickly does it have to happen? Is it time sensitive? Okay, when you're actually in the meeting, you're conducting this difficult conversation, tip number 5 is to use a neutral tone. Take the emotions out of it. We don't need to make time for a personal check-in, for empathizing with how things are going and kind of take that long beginning of the conversation to see how everyone's feeling. We know this is going to be a conversation that might be a little bit challenging. So let's just jump right in with the facts. And that leads me to number 6, which is to clarify the purpose and the goals of why you're meeting. State the facts, make it clear, use that simple language that you planned for. And then number 7, take some time to listen. This is the point of the conversation where you might have to be holding back a lot of what you wish you could say, but you're not going to say, because you really want to give that other person the opportunity to share what they're thinking, to share their perspective, to share their experience, to share what's going on with them. And as you're listening, think about taking opportunities to check for understanding, to make sure you're really interpreting what they're saying correctly. You can say things like, what I'm hearing is, or I'm hearing you say, or please correct me, this is what I'm hearing. Just so you can make sure you understand their perspective in this conversation. My 8th thing is to clarify what happened, to make this issue that we're dealing with a third thing. Restate it as a problem we're trying to solve together or a shared goal that we are working towards. Because ultimately, the 2 people that are in the room, or 3 or 4 or 5 or however many there are, probably do have a common goal. We want to work towards this shared goal together, just the way we look at it is a little bit different. So if we can articulate what this shared goal is, we can actually come together to try to resolve it as a team, instead of being one side versus another side. My 10th tip is to set agreements for success. Agree on what success looks like when we come together so that we feel like we actually know what we're working towards and there's clarity around what success actually looks like. I think I might have totally messed up the numbers. I should be on number 10, but somehow I'm on number 11, and this is for what happens after the meeting. And that is sending a follow-up email in writing about what you agreed upon, so that even if there was some opportunity for miscommunication in that face-to-face setting, there is some writing about what was agreed upon in this meeting, because that can prompt another conversation if things weren't perfectly clear. Okay, so that was my 10, but somehow listed as 11 tips for purposeful and effective difficult conversations. I'm going to go through them really quickly right now. Number 1 is to write down what you want to say. Number 2 is to practice or rehearse. Number 3 is to set aside a time and a place for the conversation. Number 4 is to choose and use the simplest language possible. And I had 4A, consider those considerations of where and when and who should be in the room. Number 5 is using a neutral tone and taking the emotions out of it. Number 6 is to clarify the purpose and the goals. Number 7 is to listen for genuine understanding. Number 8 is to clarify what happened and make it a third thing that we can solve together. Number 9 is to set agreements for success. And number 10 is to send a follow-up email. I feel like that sounds like a lot of steps, but it's really not. All of those steps are quite straightforward and they're repeatable. They're things you can do again and again and get better with over time. In reality, we all have to have these difficult conversations. We might not recognize that that's what they are when they're happening, but if we take the time to prepare and execute them thoughtfully and carefully, we will get better at them so that a couple of months or years from now or decades from now, depending on how many you have, you will realize that actually this doesn't have to be scary and it's something you can be quite good at. Thank you for watching this video today. I hope those tips were helpful for you. If you found something useful in here, something you never thought about before, please leave a comment or reach out to us on social. I'd love to hear how this video is helping you. And as I promised at the beginning of the video, the inspiration for today's topic was kind of a combo between our Women Who Lead interviews and my coaching conversations that I'm having with the Coach Microcredential participants and my private mentoring practice. And if that all sounds interesting to you, you will love the Coach Microcredential. Registration is open now and closing soon, so don't miss your chance to join our 5th cohort of the Coach. But don't take it from me. Now I'd like to share a video from one of our current participants telling you why you should take the Coach.
I decided to join the Coach because I thought that of all of the coaching training platforms that I had seen, the Coach was the most relevant for me as a tech integrationist and a tech coach at my school, due to the fact that the mentors in the Coach have a tech background. I felt that it was important for me to have coaches who were specific to my field so that they could help address issues that are very specific to technology coaching in schools. I've been delighted to find that, in actual fact, the Coach is very universal, and it is not something that is 100% tech coach. And so that means that anyone could join and benefit from it, and it's neutral in the fact that it would work for any type of coach to learn the basic skills of coaching.
Are you ready to take your coaching skills to the next level? Join the next cohort of the Coach and make it happen.